everybody. Real apologies here. DVSA were supposed to be joining us today. We had a message at around about 3 o'clock today, or just after, saying that because communications aren't signed off yet to go out, they're waiting on official approval from beyond DVSA. They can't actually start chasing those communications down, having other meetings as well. So they've given us their sincere apologies. Olivia has communicated with my NAF fellow colleagues, but by the time I got the message, and they cancelled this meeting for their members, but by the time I got the message to make the call, I thought it was far too short a notice to cancel the webinar. And I also thought it would be a good opportunity for you to speak to us again, give any other updates that we received today, just have a general chat to you anyway. So, as I said, real apologies, we haven't got DVSA on this. We hope to reorganize a NASP webinar with them later this week when those comms come out. But we're happy and prepared to take questions from you today and give you any updates that we can. Is that okay with everybody? So just a little bit of housekeeping this webinar. This will be a shorter one than we had just today, but I'm very happy to cover ground we covered yesterday again, because there'll be some new participants in this webinar. If you want to ask us questions, put them in the Q&A box and we'll be monitoring that throughout the session. You can chat amongst yourselves in the chat box. We won't be monitoring that as closely. It's quite difficult to do the chat box and the Q&A. So, have your own conversations there and share, views with each other. That's perfectly okay. But that's, we just need to see the Q&As in the Q&A for us to do that. We're also establishing a set of FAQs, frequently asked questions, that we can ship out to everybody, so we can let you know those soon. And then not that we're those, look at those, don't ring us up. You can still ring us up, you can still email us with all your questions, but it might just be that when we've published those FAQs, if you have a quick glance at those, they may just answer quite a few of your questions as well. But thanks to everybody for sending in their FAQs, because we don't think of everything. We're not thinking of everybody's got an individual perception and experience of this, so it's good to have different viewpoints from people as well, and you to ask questions from your own concerns and experiences, so we don't forget about those. So Mark, is there anything, just going to you quickly on the, let's reverse. Riders always feel like they're, the second class citizen. Let's give you top billing. Do you want to run through a quick update from your world? So this is Mark Jaffe, who is our Chief Motorcycling Examiner, very experienced rider trainer himself, and he's our motorcycling spokesperson and PSA. So he knows far more about this than I do. Anything that you want to update rider trainers on, or need to know things for them?
So really, just to reiterate what the dictate is, no training at all until the 2nd of December. That includes CBTs. CBTs are not going to be extended in the same way MOTs were in lockdown 1. And neither are theory test certificates, so those aren't being extended. In terms of booking, the OBS, the online booking system, is going to remain open this time rather than being shut down like it was in lockdown 1, because we are still able to buy tests 10 weeks ahead of time. My recommendation would be for people that have got tests pre-booked for lockdown period is to go online and use the cancel facilities, as long as they're over 3 days. Anything that's still there under 3 days, let the DVSA do the cancelling of those inside 3 days, because otherwise you'll just lose your money for those. With as far as reprioritizing tests, because we have control of the tests on the OBS, it's down to the ATB to decide how they prioritize who goes out for test from the 2nd of December onwards. Some ATBs have maintained the people that already had tests booked out of lockdown, and then slotted the lockdown people in those in any other free slots. Other people have just picked up the whole diary and moved it 4 weeks, regardless. So as we have control as an ATB over who does go to test, then that's down to each ATB to decide who does. If you want to move a key worker into one of those slots after the 18th, then that's absolutely fine. Most ATBs have received a call from the CBT area manager today, just double checking and confirming that the ATB understands that it's a complete shutdown, no training, including CBTs, and anybody who's got a CBT that's expiring during lockdown, I'm afraid at the moment that is tough. They'll have to wait until lockdown changes. So I know most ATBs have had a phone call from the area managers just double checking it. I think this is the DVSA's belt and braces this time round, because there was a lot of ATBs not doing what they should have been doing in the last lockdown. So I think they are taking it very seriously. Unless anything else changes, the enforcement team will be enforcing the lockdown for ATBs. And that's just kind of about a summary of where we're at.
Yeah, just the only exception, obviously, on rider testing and training is that in Northern Ireland, for our Northern Irish members, that has resumed after being initially halted with their last kind of lockdown, but they clarified the regulations in Northern Ireland, and now they have allowed elements of rider testing as long as social distancing can clearly take place. So there'll be no classroom based rider training particularly, but there'll be some practical training and testing going on in Northern Ireland. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm just going to go through a quick rundown of what we went through in yesterday's webinar for those people new to this, but I won't spend it for those people who came yesterday, and then I'm going to tackle some of the questions that I can see that are coming up there. I'm not going to be able to give you, again, absolute answers to some of these questions because these are things that are still being discussed at both DVSA level and a higher level than that, and it's the reason that they're not here today because they've had to carry on those important discussions as well. So as you know, theory and practical training for all license categories and types of vehicle cancelled this weekend up to the 2nd of December. That it means that training and testing can start taking place from the 2nd of December, provided that we won't have another lockdown. I'm referring at the moment strictly to England. I'll go through the Welsh and Scottish news later. Critical worker tests. It is our expectation that there will not be critical worker tests available. If there are at all, there will be an extremely tiny amount of those for very, very urgently needed frontline positions. So, and most of those people who would be needed to go into those frontline emergency care roles will have already obtained their license by now, ahead of this lockdown, and be into that position. So it's not likely that people are going to depend on people but can't get it in the next 4 weeks as their critical people. So I think, don't get your hopes up on that one if you were hoping to do some key worker training. But we'll have confirmation of that in the comms pack that will come out shortly from DVSA. There is still to be, hang on, just give me a minute, I was going through my notes, sorry. The big question that people have been asking is, if you are going to suspend all training and tests, are we going to see a clear directive from government on that this time, and are we going to see enforcement? Because obviously the issues that we had last time were that there wasn't a directive, and it meant that some people followed the guidelines, but others went out and delivered training because there wasn't a clear directive that banned them from doing so. A real muddle of a situation and a very unfair situation in many ways. So obviously we've been asking for, and DVSA are looking for where they can make those clear directives, and also hooking up with enforcement, such as obviously the police, to see what is going to be the risk, what is going to be the penalty that you may face if you decide to carry on training. Now, I can see in the questions, and it's already been asked of me today, that of the legislation laid before Parliament today, that was drafted over the weekend, does not absolutely specifically discuss driver training and testing. So that's not in the legislation. So naturally, number one question is, what if it's not there, then we can still do it, right? The other thing that is making people ask the question is the fact that in that legislation, it does talk about training and education can still be delivered, and that's not, there's not lots of exemptions in that, you're not seeing anything that would ban you from doing your job in the legislation. So that is one of the areas that we are seeking that clarity and that directive from DVSA on, and they are obviously at this moment in time working hard to make sure that that directive is, it is clear, and that people know what they're expected not to do in the next 4 weeks. Rather than what they can do. So again, it's a yes, that has been spotted. It's not in the legislation, but don't assume and don't rely on that not coming out as a clear directive shortly from government as well. So, I wouldn't want anybody saying, "Ha, caught them out. I can go and do my training," because I'm not sure that that's going to be the case for much longer. And I know we're getting to the wire because as of midnight tonight, we're in the lockdown. So you'd think we had all that clarity by now, but as I said to you guys yesterday, don't think when Boris stands at his podium on Saturday interrupting, Strictly Come Dancing and the rugby, that he communicated with everybody that needed to communicate with each industry, and that they'd really thought through how this was going to be worked through all, sectors of our lives as well. So I think, let us come back to you on that question. We recognise the question, we recognise the validity of the question, and it has been challenged, believe you me, and we're seeking to get an answer on that as soon as we possibly can, and that's that's one of the reasons that the comms pack is being slightly delayed, making sure you've got that clarification on that point. And also, if somebody does go out and train and there is a clear directive not to, what is the risk? Is there going to be enforcement? The other risk that I referred to yesterday was the fact that if there is a clear directive from government or the regulator of an industry that training should not take place, the insurance for your training car and the motor insurance, and also PIPL, professional indemnity and public liability, and other insurances that you may hold related to your training business may be voided if you decide to train. So at the end of the day, we could have people who decide to take the risk and train, even with a clear directive and the threat of enforcement, but may take the view, well, you're really going to catch me if I take all the signboards off. I'm not encouraging you, by the way, just calling out the people that may do it. You do have to bear in mind that other risks that you might run, that if somebody does decide to make a claim against you in that period, or you have a crash and you're delivering training, you want to claim on your insurance, you're going to get caught out on that side of things as well. So check that with your individual insurer, and check the wording of the policy as well. There's usually a clause in there that says that the insurance is nullified if there is a directive from a regulatory or legislative point of view that you shouldn't be training. So that's on the test booking situation. This is another question that we've had very frequently. What will happen? Well, Mark's touched upon that from the rider training point of view. It's our expectation, but this hasn't been confirmed yet, that DVSA they've cancelled out all the test bookings for the 4-week period. So anybody who had a test booked in this 4-week period has that cancelled, and they will be issued with a new date. Now, if they can't make that new date, they will be offered the option to book a later date than the date that they were offered. But I would urge your pupils, if that's the case, if that's the way that DVSA do it, issuing a new date, but you can choose one if that doesn't work, I would urge your pupils to keep to that date that's offered to them, because we weren't even coping with the backlog from the last lockdown. We've obviously had this massive spanner put in the works now. It would really help if people could stick to the dates they're given as far as they can. Otherwise, they might find themselves quite a way back in terms of being able to book a test. And we've got to have an expectation that, you know, it's going to be a long time playing catch up on all these test rebookings. The other thing I would say is that, again, another risk, if people do decide to, you know, not follow a directive or not follow guidance about not training, you know, you do need to be honest with your pupils that if you continue to train somebody, you know, there is guidance out there that says you shouldn't be, or there should be guidance coming that you shouldn't be. But also, you know, they're not going to get a test you know, very easily, especially if they're a new trainee that was taken on. So, you know, it could be, and I'm not saying this is my view, but it could be considered unscrupulous to, you know, take pupil out for training with an expectation that they're going to get a test in the short term. You know, if you take training in this lockdown period, that, you know, because that you cannot deliver on that expectation. So just, you know, just bear in mind managing expectations of pupils in a general sense as a whole industry, but also people who think they might chance going under the wire, that they're holding out a falsehood that pupil is going to be able to get a test, you know, in the shorter term as well. So that's the UK. And again, that's what this comms pack that we're waiting for will deal with. What's going to be the situation with the rebooking of tests? It's going to cover all of those FAQs. In Wales, we know that testing and training has been suspended, and it's expected to resume when the fire break in Wales is ended on the 9th of November. We have raised the question about if an English ADI wants to go across the border into Wales from the 9th of November and teach their Welsh pupils, is that allowable? And again, that will be tackled in the communication that's going to come out from DVSA shortly, and also for Scotland. In Scotland, there's lots of speculation in the media that Scotland, you know, is not ruling out that they may go into a nationwide lockdown, i.e. they'll go into level 4. That's not been confirmed at the moment, but there is speculation in the media that that's going to happen. If that does happen, obviously that would mean no testing in Scotland. Well, the only other development in Scotland that we had in the last week is that if you are still out there training, clearly there is now the compulsory need to wear a mask when training. So not just in testing, it has to be worn in training as well. In Northern Ireland, tests scheduled between the 17th of October and the 13th of November have been cancelled. But as I said before, rider training and testing is taking place because of the fact that they clarified their regulations and it does allow for it as well. Anything, guys, in terms of questions that you can see have popped up whilst I've been speaking, or anything you want to say?
Yeah, just going through some of the questions. A lot of them are a lot of people asking about the key worker situation, and as we've said, you know, at the moment we're waiting on extra clarification on that. As Carly said, it's not. You said, I think you said it last night as well, Carly. It's expected if it does go ahead, it's going to be, you know, a very small amount of people, perhaps. So that's what the expectation is at the moment. Due to mainly the fact that the lockdown isn't going to be quite as long as it was before. So same lockdown, but slightly different rules on that. So that is probably one of the number one questions people are asking. So that until we get that extra clarification from DVSA, you know, we don't know for sure at this time.
One other question that's just popped up about tests going ahead on the 2nd of December. Yes, at the moment, everything recommences on the 2nd of December. So you can start training and tests. If people have got them booked on the 2nd of December, you'll be able to go for tests on the 2nd. Providing
that the government hasn't locked any lockdown, of course.
At the moment, that is the plan.
Yeah, we have to be. So will I be able to teach my daughter or somebody in my same household? That's a very popular question. In terms of a risk, in terms of an infection risk, I mean, obviously there isn't any because you're it's very minimal, if anything, because you're in the same household. But, you know, going out in a liveried up training car, as Carly said last night, you've got a target on your backside. You know, you've got to consider how that might look if we're not allowed to do this, also you've got to also consider the nature of your journey. Is it an essential journey, or are you just going out for a drive to practice? So, you know, one could argue, if you are going for groceries, or you're going to pick up a prescription from up the road and you've got somebody in your household and they can drive the car for a little bit of extra practice, you know, you could argue that, you know, that makes some sense. But again, until we've had that absolutely clarified, then we, you know, we can't say for absolutely sure.
There will be something on private practice in the comms pack that DVSA are sending out, so that question has been raised and will definitely be covered in those. Yeah. So other questions are about confirmation. Is it Wednesday the 2nd or Thursday the 3rd? So we've done that. Key workers, lots of key worker ones, just going through them. Rebooking of tests, to be fair to everybody. So obviously the people whose tests will be affected in November, then those people, what do those people do? Do they go to the back of the queue? Do they have to, Carly, do you know anything else on that one? Not at this moment in time. I've only got my expectation of how, so I would wait for that pack to come out before, so I don't give you any false information on that one. But yeah, I think, you know, that obviously the people who are having their test cancelled for this 4-week period will be the ones that receive the email, if that's the system they choose to do, giving them a new date, and that's just, you know, an advisory note from me. It's for you to speak to your pupils and see that you know, and make sure, and obviously make sure that you're able to train them in time for that new date. But it would be great if they could keep to those dates that they're given. Otherwise, they might have to wait quite a while longer.
Yeah, John's asked about cross-border training. So yeah, Carly addressed that a few moments ago. Mark and I were talking just at the beginning, weren't we, Mark, just to say that DVSA did put a direct out about a couple of weeks back, to say any ADIs in England going into the Wales, any Welsh people in the Wales country region going to England for the test, then they would be refused the test. So we know it's that way round. There is maybe some logic there, as some, you know, that it would be the other way around.
If I wanted to second guess that for one of the motorcycle questions we had, my guess is that they're based in England, but use test centres in Wales. I would have suggested that the answer will be no, they can't, because they can't train in England to get people to Wales for tests. So I think the answer, we will get a definitive answer for the training school that asked the question, but my gut feeling will be no, you can't go from England to Wales to test.
Yeah. Other people are asking, what should I do about test candidates that have tests booked for tomorrow? I mean, those tests have been suspended, and so is training until further notice. We've got news come through that the lockdown has just been approved by the government. So those tests are going to, you know, that they are still suspended, so they won't be happening tomorrow. It's fair to say.
And also just to comment that obviously the suspension applies to theory tests as well as all practical in or on vehicle tests. And it also applies to any standards checks and part 3s, part 2s as well. So I know that might come as a relief to some people, but just to clarify that it is all levels of testing and training. There's still, for those who are vocational trainers, obviously practical vocational tests are suspended, but CPC will continue online because they've already got a platform to deliver CPC online at the moment as well. I've just had a quick look at the chat as well as the questions, and thanks Sally for pointing out something to add to the insurance advice that I gave, that some car insurers may also not cover novice drivers during private practice at this time, if they're aware that there is a suspension of training testing in the UK. So please do check with your insurer so you don't incur, you know, that penalty as well. If you're going to walk that very risky line of deciding to do something in the next 4 weeks, then you need to be managing those risks as best you can. I'm not advocating it in any way, shape, or I just want you to manage risk in every way that you can. I can't control you, but obviously if there is a directive that comes from government, there will be control because there will be enforcement. Equally, you've got to check with your insurer about those things as well.
There's one question coming in there is, why is it okay for ROSPA to carry on training? I don't know. It might be they've just not announced it yet. IAM Road Smart have already confirmed that they have suspended all training and testing. So I can only assume that ROSPA will be pretty quickly behind this because it's not within the rules.
Yeah, I think that ROSPA have just been late getting out their communications, because ROSPA and IAM, sadly for them, are not privy to the direct conversations necessarily with DSA that we are. So they're not a first tier stakeholder in this respect. So they're a little bit behind the news on being able to brief their trainers on that. But if you are a ROSPA or IAM trainer, you should assume that all training is suspended. There won't be any special exemptions unless, for example, a little bit like we've done some this week, they are involved in paramedic training, and there is a desperate need from an ambulance service to do something very, very quickly. There's an urgent need for more paramedics to be developed in some way, but those will probably be full license holders being developed for blue lights driving or something like that. So, but I think that's going to be a pretty rare occurrence happening over these next 4 weeks, if at all. I think one of the things we did yesterday is we also looked at financial advice. So for the, obviously your great concern right now is about, can I train, can I not train? But at the same time as that, you've also got this concern, what do I do about money whilst I'm not training? So the self-employment income support grant, they announced yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, that would actually be extended, and they'd still pay that at 80%. Because if you remember, the Chancellor before this latest lockdown had announced that there would be a third grant, but it would be reduced to 55%. They've now obviously announced that it will be up to 80%. The eligibility for this particular grant has slightly changed, and I discussed that yesterday on the webinar. And what I would suggest you do, we're packaging up some details on financial support now. There's some stuff already available, actually, if you go to driving.org. And look at the COVID advice or coronavirus advice that's on there. So there's plenty of stuff on there for you. But also Money Saving Expert, I think, is a really excellent site for clear, direct, advice for small businesses and advice on benefits as well. There is going to be a fourth round of the self-employment income support grant. So in total, there will be 4 phases. The 2 we've already had, the one that you can apply for now. There'll also be one covering the 30th of April 2021. The government has not said what percentage they'll be paying in that one. I would expect that one will definitely go down to 50%, if not smaller, and what the terms will be. They have agreed that they will have a 4th grant available, so effectively covering 12 months of the lockdown in 3-month blocks as well. So clue yourself up on that grant. The current eligibility criteria for this grant. The previous 2 grants have said, basically, if your business has been affected by coronavirus in any way, as long as you're less than 50%, £50,000 of earning, and less than, more than 50% of your earnings come from driving instruction, and you've got the accounts for 2018, 2019, you're eligible. On this latest 3rd round of grant, they've actually said that your business must be impacted by reduced demand due to this latest lockdown. So again, check that criteria. That's all on gov.uk, as well as on things like Money Saving Expert. Remember, you can keep working if you do receive the grant. You can claim it. We had a question yesterday, I'm 70, can I claim it? Yes, you can. There's no age restriction on it. It's just those criteria that you can't earn more than £50,000 a year, or have £50,000 of profits on there, and also that most of your income has to come from driving instruction. So, for example, people who have already started to draw down a pension and that's outstripping their driving instruction or your declared driving instruction earnings will miss out on this grant, or if they have income, for example, they might be a landlord or anything like that from another source, that makes them ineligible for the grant as well. So check out those options. The bounce back loans are also still available. They're available till the end of November. They've also changed the terms on those bounce back loans. So originally, the bounce back loan, which is a loan that you can take from £2,000 to £50,000 back security, so you don't need to offer any security of your own on it. It is you don't pay anything in your first year, so you can take the money, so you can take 5 or 6 grand, you don't pay anything for a year. Its interest rate is only 2.5%. Originally, they said you had to pay it over 6 years. Now they increased that, you pay it back after 10 years. And I believe you can also have 3 payment breaks during that period as well. So it's probably one of the best debt deals you're going to get. And my background is working in financial services, in particular in the area of debt acquisition and debt financing and things like that. So, you know, I know people don't want to take on more debt at a time like this when they've already probably had to take on some debt. But if you are going to look at, for example, consolidating loans that you already have to a lower rate of interest and more favourable payment terms, or you want to use it to pay yourself some income, you could use the bounce back loan to do that. There's no restrictions on what you use this money for, and it might just tide you over on a lot more favourable terms than you're actually going to get from a lot of the high street banks at the moment. You can apply for the loan by your high street banks, but I am aware that if you haven't got a business account with a lot of the high street banks that are offering it, they're not accepting new customers at the moment. I think Starling Bank, which is the online bank, is the only one that's accepting new customers for a new business account. So if you've got an existing business account with any of the high street banks, that you can still apply for the loan through them. But if you haven't got a business account with anybody, I think Starling Bank may be your only option to apply. It may be, though, that other lenders come on stream once they've realised there's such a scarcity of lenders for new account holders as well. I was glad to hear yesterday as well. We wrote to the Chancellor about this last week, urging them not to alter the minimum income floor on universal credit, which would have meant, if they did that, as they wanted to do in November, it would have meant driving instructors and other self-employed people would no longer be able to use that avenue of benefits. The Chancellor announced just they would amend the income floor until next year. So again, I know this isn't a lot of money, but it's the Tesco thing, isn't it? Every little helps. So if you want to apply for universal credit, you still have the opportunity to do so. I'm not promising it's a straightforward process and you'll get the money like that on any of these things, but it's worth bearing that in mind and starting these processes now to make sure you are in the position to receive some of that funding at some point as well. We've talked before in financial advisory type webinars about the measures that you can take in terms of reducing outgoings if you can by negotiating payment breaks. Many of you will have used up that opportunity, sadly, with the 3-month lockdown. But if you haven't, it is worth talking to every single provider of finance to you, whether that's utilities, your mortgage, your car loan, whatever, and seeing if there's anything else that they're going to do. Whether you haven't deferred any of those payments, take that opportunity now, or you've already done some deferments or taken a holiday from payments. It might be worth asking if they're doing anything else. I will be writing to all the franchise operators, because we have had members speak to us today and say, last lockdown, they were offered quite a lot of support with their payments for their franchise. And it's one of the biggest, chunkiest payments they've got coming out of their bank account every month. And effectively, they're paying for a business support tool that they're not able to use during lockdown. But some of the franchises have already said that, the members are telling us they don't think their franchise is doing very much for them this time, or offering them very much to help. So I will be writing to the franchises to both ask them what the arrangements they're going to be able to make, and is there anything that they can do further that they haven't offered already to people, because we know that's a big outgoing for people as well. So I think that's it. There are bits and bats of other bits or funding around the country that is is local authority funding. So you might want to look at what's happening in your local area. Is there other local authority support for small businesses that you can tap into? I know it's not great because a lot of it is available for people who have things like premises, so they're getting support financially to help them still maintain the rent on their premises and things like that. But you might find spits and spats of local support financially for you as a small business, so have a look at that. There is some level of support for people who have to shield or self-isolate because they've got COVID, and that's through an employment support allowance. So if you want the new style employment support allowance, there is some offering in some areas for a small payment to be made to people who are self-employed that are having to shield or self-isolate because they've been identified as having COVID, or someone in their house as well. So look into those options. But as we get more and more financial advice, we will clearly pass that on to you. But again, just to repeat myself, things like Money Saving Expert, Money Advisory Service, and the Citizen Advice Bureau have got all the up-to-date information for small businesses, self-employed people, and people generally, in terms of dealing with the financial hardship they're suffering during this particular lockdown. Anything you guys want to add on the financial side, or anything that has come in terms of questions?
I think it's 80% for November only, and then it goes back to reverts back for the other 3 months for December and January. So the 80%, I believe, it's just for November.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's set to open for applications on 30th of November. It'll cover the period from the 1st of November 2020 until the 31st of January 2021. It's a lump sum covering 55% of 3 months worth of average profit. So this is made up of 80% of average monthly profits for November and 40% of average monthly profits for November and January. So that's how we get to that 55%. It's the average of those two. The grant round number 4, that one will open in February, we expect, and is going to cover February to April 21 as well. Somebody did ask me, as these grants are creeping later and later into another tax year, will those of us who are doing our 1920 tax return be able to use that for these grants? I don't believe that's the case. I still think they want the 2018, 2019, that's what they're using. However, we might see with the grant round number 4 that they might take into account those later sets of accounts as well. But we'll seek some clarification on that matter for you.
With the seeking, they're getting the demand being reduced. I mean, it's demand hasn't been reduced in a lot of cases, has it? People are still,
No.
are still really busy, and so Jeff has said, it's not that so much, it's the stopping us instructing that's reducing the income. Asking about the qualification for the third size grant, that's a bit that's an interesting point.
I think it was an extremely difficult decision to make this time, given the fact that we'd only just started a road to recovery, and some businesses weren't seeing recovery at all. And the economy is obviously in a dire state anyway. We're certainly in a recessionary environment now. And we didn't necessarily want to stop business from operating again, but Sage advised that it could see there being another potential disaster in terms of the death rate creeping up again and the NHS not being able to cope. And even though in the select committee yesterday and today they've been grilled and have said they were kind of sorry for scaring us, that doesn't really help when the decisions have already been made and they've just been ratified by Parliament as well about the lockdown. So sorry we're at this stage again, folks, but we'll try and help as much as we can by keeping you updated as to when we receive news and thinking where we can what advice and support that we can give to our members as well. But if there's particular topics you would like us to focus on, again, I know sometimes it's very short notice, but we're very happy, aren't we, Olivia and Mark and everybody who it falls on to organise this stuff, to do these off the cuff webinars. That's not a continuous and persistent cough, by the way. Please let us know what topics you'd like to cover. I wonder, Olivia, is it useful maybe to give, I know people may not be thinking now, they might not have psychologically moved on to what am I going to do in the next 4 weeks in a practical and positive sense. They might still be stuck at the, oh my God, you know, stage of this, and I can't actually believe it's happening. And actually, I don't believe it's happening. I'm just going to ignore it anyway. But maybe to just give people some advice about what practical steps they could be taking during this next 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like if we're at home, then I think it's the big thing is communication, and everyone will need communication. So it's staying in touch with DVSA direct emails as a basic, staying in touch with your membership association, making sure that you're getting that you know, that information when we get it, when we send it out to you. Obviously filtering that down to your pupils and your parents. And I know I don't mean to teach you to suck eggs here, I know everyone's doing this, but it's just making sure, even if again there's no news for a week or, you know, something like that, it's just that update. So, you know, consider, I don't know, some of you might send around, I know some of you send around like a little a mailer or something like that, an email to your pupils and parents, just to keep them updated, maybe forward some messaging to them, those sorts of things. When we were just about to go into the lockdown in March, we did a webinar, and it's available on our DIA Academy with all the others, and it's how to keep your pupils engaged. So you'd have a little bit of time now, so I wanted to advise you go back on there and have a little look at that. So there are some sort of practical things. We're thinking of doing like a short either webinar or a short virtual classroom that we're releasing those now as short sessions, that you can how to sort of conduct a Zoom session, and how to, you know, what are the rules, what are the things that you need to discuss around doing that with your pupils as well, in order just to keep them engaged and things like that. So there are some bits on there, so I'd advise you go and have a little look at that, and if you want more information on that, do let us know. In terms of what we're doing, yeah, I mean, we are, as I say, we are launching, and we launched this before we got wind of any potential lockdown coming out. So apologies for the timing, folks, but it might also be a good thing that we are launching it now, because you might have a little bit more time, but we have actually pushed them back to December. So yeah, we're doing what we call our virtual classroom. So that will be a couple of hours, sort of, you know, intensified learning on Zoom, and it will be like a short, sharp, you know, bite-sized chunk of learning, and we're looking at the standard check initially. So once they are, you know, we're back doing those, which hopefully be next month. Not hopefully, for a lot of you, it's never a nice thing, but we have to do it. Then we can go through with some of your issues and your questions and things like that, and run through a little like a training course. And it's going to be exactly the same as a training course, just you're going to be in your front room and we're going to be in ours. So we've got those coming out as well. So have a little look out for the website on those. We are continuing to do our
just so people are aware, those are only going to be like 15, 20 people in a classroom, not the size of our webinars. So it'll allow for a lot more interactivity with the delegates, just like if you're in one of our classroom courses.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, we do want that interactivity from you on that. So thank you, Carl. It's a good point. I was going to say something else then. Oh yeah, and we'll just continue doing our weekly webinars on generally on a Friday. So if you are around on a Friday, then come and join in with those. They're free for members, and again, we've got a good schedule. We've got some guest speakers coming up. We've got Howard and I are going to do something on LGV this Friday, and we've also got on the 27th of November one with the Information Commissioner's Office, which will be really quite interesting. I'm actually quite excited about it, and that sounds a bit geeky, but it's that is a real things to know, and you can ask all your questions in advance to us. We can share them with those guys, and we're going to have somebody on from the ICO, and also about benefits of why you should join, why you should be an ICO member, what benefits and protections are there for you and your business, and all of those sorts of things, and just kind of demystifying the data protection general regulations and data protection in general. So stay tuned to us, and get involved. We've got quite a few things coming up for you. If there's anything else specific, then just ask.
The other steps, I was thinking that people, obviously, again, grandma teach you to suck eggs here. Planning your diaries now, obviously, is going to be an important task because it's shifting everything back another 4 weeks, and planning in that pupils are going to have their test shoved back. And what time you're going to have with them to be able to, give them some refresher training after being off the road for 4 weeks as well. We're going to do some webinars on how to deliver virtual training. But in this period, as we advised in the last period, those who were able to quickly get virtual training set up, were able to offer a service even in lockdown. So, from a very simple perspective, if you wanted to set up a Zoom classroom for your pupils to be able to give them some briefings at this time, that would be a good way in terms of retention and communication to your pupils. But however, you could also do it via a Facebook Live yourself from your Facebook page. You could also do, WhatsApp group chat by video. You can do Skype, Google Hangouts. I think pupils, just invite them. It's something they might engage in to get some engagement from you, and also to answer some key questions at this time. It might be, because the big thing we always talk about is engaging parents. You might not get mum and dad actually in a normal run of things when you're doing your practical lessons. However, at the moment, you might want to, for example, run a virtual classroom session on something like private practice. If they're going to go out and do it whilst you're not able to teach them, is it better that they at least have a briefing from you about the pitfalls of private practice and what to do and what not to do if they are going to, risk going out and doing that private practice in this period? Or do you do a general webinar for parents, parental tips? Because they may be more likely to get involved with an online webinar and learn something from you than they might in the general course of things when you're standing by their drive, dropping off their child and they're rushed. So, maybe think about that could be a topic, and what other topics could I deliver over the next 4 weeks? So I'm offering that service to pupils. It's also about getting pupils in the train. Online training has seen an exponential rise during lockdown. More and more people are engaging in it than ever before. You guys have also got to tap into that seam of how people are wanting to consume education and have an enthusiasm. So tap into that enthusiasm now. Provide that service during lockdown. You may want to charge for it. You may want to provide it for free. But if you get them in the rote of seeing you in a virtual situation now, continue that after lockdown, they'll value it, and you can start to monetize that maybe, or it's your USP, it's your value add that they don't get from other instructors, and you've got a routine of doing it, and you're gathering traction with getting pupils to those sessions as well. So I think, it's not about, I'm sitting here saying lots of positive stuff. You don't want to hear it right now because you haven't moved on psychologically from the negative bit, but you've got to do something with your next 4 weeks. And I think these kind of tools could be utilized to keep you in touch with your pupils, but also help you develop what you offer to pupils as well, and keep you going as a trainer too. So I think, and the other big thing is, obviously there's a lot to plow through in terms of financial support. So getting going on making any applications for any grants, applying for any bounce back loans, looking at what benefits you could get, or any payments you can defer, that all of that's going to take time for you as well. Oh, we have had a few questions, I've noticed, Olivia, on the FAQs about ADI badge extensions as well. So I don't think we've had any clarification on those from DVSA, but rest assured, all the questions that you have asked us today and have asked us previously, we've put into a spreadsheet and delivered that up to DVSA already to either answer us directly or make sure that that question is answered in their communications. They've reassured that they've taken all of those on board and that they are answering as many questions as they possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do need that clarification. I mean, we can sort of speculate and say, look, this is what they did last time, which we know, but whether that will be the case this time, I don't know if it's a tongue-tied responsible thing to say that at this time. I think we best wait for DVSA to clarify it.
So hopefully And I'm looking at my email again just to make sure we've not had an email, but hopefully we'll get those communications very, very shortly, so we've got more clarity and certainty on these issues. Mark, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, in the motorcycle world, if your instructor badge, which is the same as the ADI badge, is running out, they are renewing them during lockdown. But we have this additional level of the ATB in between the instructor and the student. So I don't know how it works with the ADI world, but certainly with the motorcycle world, the ATB can apply for instructor badges during lockdown if they're running out, and they are delivering them out.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up now, folks. I don't want to keep you tethered to us too long, because I know you have other things to do in your life than this, and you want to also, get cracking on things for your business as well, and your families. So expect that we might arrange other ad hoc webinars as we get more information, or we're seeing you guys ask us a lot of questions and we think, let's just hop on a webinar and do that. So I hope these are useful to you. Sorry, we can't always give you lots of notice. Keep your questions coming. Let us know what topics you wanted to cover in specific webinars, and we'll put a load of training webinars on like we did last time during lockdown to keep you occupied. And our thoughts go to all of you at this really difficult time. Keep your chins up. I know it's all a bit Churchillian kind of, and all right for me to say, but we are really thinking of you. And if there's anything you think we can do to support you, and I will add to that, people saying, well, I hope you're lobbying Rishi and all those things. Yes, we're writing to everybody all the time, asking them for more money, asking them, for more, consideration for driving instructors, and as our other business leaders in other sectors as well. But keep the application coming to us, and we'll keep try our best to keep you supported during this difficult time as well. So thanks very much for tuning in today and all your thoughts and questions.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Stay well. Bye-bye.